how do you take out discretionary and one-time expenses in order to find your agency's like true adjusted EBITDA? Welcome to Business Refocused, a podcast about the people, decisions, and strategies behind building a successful business. Each week, we talk with leaders and operators about what they're learning, what's working, and the challenges that come with growth. I'm Lindsay Sexton, and I'm happy to introduce you to my co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Let's get into it. Hey, Mom, how's it going?
Good. I love these little coffee breaks, but I realized I have no coffee with me. What the heck? How can it be a coffee break if we don't have coffee?
What's really funny is I have a coffee mug here, but it's filled with dog food.
Wow.
Why would you have dog food in your coffee mug? I'm just curious.
Well, I was in a pinch the other day and I had a client call and I had to, the dogs were being bad. And so I had this in my lap so I could just keep throwing them dog food to keep them quiet and tired.
That's, yeah.
Like whenever they made a noise, I would just throw them dog food so they would lay back down.
Yeah, that's how I control Toby. So I know exactly what that is like.
So funny.
Today, hopefully my dogs stay quiet. They're both laying down and sleeping. So fingers crossed. But we have a special guest on the podcast today, someone who is on our team and we get to work with on a regular basis. And plenty of our clients actually get to work with, but they don't know it because she's behind the screen. Lauren from our team is joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
Lauren and I, for listeners who don't know her, Lauren and I work together, and Carey and Lauren work together pretty closely because Lauren does a lot of our like back end stuff. Lauren, I actually I have a compliment for you from one of our agencies that I've been working with. They said, we think a lot of your work is done by AI. And it was like work that you did because you have like your crazy
oh my God.
Excel things, and they saw that. And I was like, actually, it's not done by AI. It's done by like our gal with a computer for a brain. And she is like AI, but she's a human. Like, it's great. Like, she just has such a smart brain for spreadsheets and all of this stuff that I don't. And she's like my yin to my yang. It's perfect.
Well, that is the highest compliment you can receive as someone who's good at Excel, because there's not much... I did find out that there is something called the Excel Olympics or something that like it's a competition for like Excel people. So maybe one day I can get the highest honor and do that.
You can get the gold medal.
My money's on you, my friend. Like if I'm a button girl, my money's on you. So if you're gonna compete in the Excel Olympics, I want to know because I'd like a front row seat because there's not many people I know that know Excel better than you.
So funny. Okay, so we have been doing a ton of meetings and a similar topic has come up. We've been doing a ton of meetings for benchmarking because we just benchmark a very large group. We benchmarked an entire network, and we've been meeting with each agency one-on-one to go over their report. And Lauren is one of the people on our team who supported that project a lot. So thank you for your support there. But she did transaction adjustments for every single agency to make sure that when we are comparing agencies to each other, we are looking apples to apples. So Lauren, do you want to explain just like at a high level, like what do you do when you do that and why do we do it?
Yeah, so I'll start with the why we do it, and I think that it's different for every agency, but a lot of agencies are using their financials in a way that's most useful for them and not necessarily most useful for a benchmarking context. So some of the adjustments we make are reclassifications of expenses that maybe don't belong in a certain category just from a fundamental, like technical standpoint. And we do that because if we don't reclassify those items, they're just not comparable. They might look at their dues and subscriptions and say, well, I know I spend a lot on dues and subscriptions, but I don't spend that much. But, if you really look into it, a lot of times people are putting technology expenses, for example, into dues and subscriptions, because it's a recurring due. That's a subscription that they pay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
can be helpful for them, but it's not great for our purposes when we're comparing them to other people.
Well, and the reality is they have no concept of where another agency puts this. So when you want to know how you're doing compared to others, that's kind of a cool thing that we do see many agencies, and we can actually make it apples to apples. But they don't know. I mean, honestly, it seems really reasonable to say, I pay my AMS system on a subscription basis,
Yeah.
therefore it goes in subscriptions. But the problem is, if you put it in subscriptions and Lindsay put it in technology and I put it in something completely different, we're never going to compare that in the right way, right?
Exactly. And from a performance measurement standpoint, it's really important to have things in a place that makes sense. Like, not necessarily like, I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly where we put it, but if you need to know, looking at your financials, if you gave your financials to someone else, would they know where to find your technology? And I think that sometimes a lot of times the answer is no, because it's in this account and this account, but not this account's not all technology. It's also this. And so the fundamental thing we do is kind of make those financials not just comparable, but also easy to understand to, an outside party.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about, because we do this for multiple different types of solutions that we offer. We do it for benchmarking, we do it for valuations, we do it for fractional CFO. Let's talk about what are some of the most common things that we adjust out in each category. So for those that don't know, that maybe haven't done work with us before, we adjust out discretionary costs and one-time costs from an EBITDA calculation. So Lauren, would you tell us what some of those common costs are in each of those sections?
Yeah. So if we're talking about like pure removals, a very common one that we see is actually country club and like golf expenses, which are typically in the dues and subscriptions area, because there are dues and subscriptions, but sometimes it's more of a personal expense for the owner, an enjoyment that they get enjoyment out of. So it's not 100% business related. And we don't want to tell an agency that their dues and subscriptions is elevated if it could be very easily reduced by them just, taking that off, because it's sort of there in name only, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
So if someone's asking themselves, like, what are the kinds of things that I might, if I wanted to do my own EBITDA calculation, what are some of the things I should think of as being discretionary? You did a perfect one, because even if you take people golfing for a business expense at your country club, that's not an expense that you would transfer if you ever sold your agency. You would keep that expense yourself, because you'd want the profitability of your agency to go up. What are some other things that you should think about in that way that might be discretionary?
Yeah. So a lot of times we see, similar to that, travel that's not necessarily like, I'm not saying for tax purposes, it's not business related, but maybe it's not necessary to support the like sales. Like, it's not 100% necessary to support the sales. So I'm talking about like luxury hotel stays, if the one way to think of it is, if someone else owned the agency, could they reduce that expense? So if you're staying at a luxury resort, even if it is business travel for tax purposes, is the quality of the resort business related? So that's another thing that we typically remove, is if something seems pretty obviously not like, posh, we don't
So what about
necessarily
a
need that.
car?
Yeah, that's actually a very common item. I mean, so a lot of people put that on their balance sheet. So sometimes that's not in their expenses, but another way would be to pay through a lease, which would appear on the P&L. And in that case, if it's a luxury automobile, we definitely would remove that, because that's another great example of if someone else owned the agency, they don't need to necessarily lease a BMW. They might even have their own personal car that they would use for business, like for sales meetings and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
not something we want to penalize people for. It takes away some of the clarity, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. It takes away some of the clarity on where really are your problem expenses, because a personal automobile, or not personal, but a luxury automobile lease is something that once the lease term ends, you could choose not to renew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's some of the craziest things you've ever seen on a P&L?
Oh my gosh. Probably, I mean, very large liquor store purchases for employee events, you know. Um, there's some stuff that's like promotional items and you don't realize that it's promotional items. So it'll be like, you know, $5,000 for, I don't know, golf balls or something. And they're promotional golf balls. I actually found one on a course near me that was an insurance related golf ball. It's so funny. It's just, and I think they do work. It's like, but at first glance, you think it's discretion. I thought that was discretionary, but I found out that no, those are promotional items.
Yeah.
So they help with selling.
You know
So
what's
Yeah.
that's
so funny is
interesting.
there is, I don't think he's an insurance agent. I don't know what he does, but right by my house, there's a golf course that we like walk every morning. We walk around hole 3, and there's a guy that has golf balls that says, "If found, text me and I'll buy you a drink at like the local bar up the street." And like that is so
So
smart. I don't
Yeah.
know
smart.
what he's selling, but I find
Mhm.
so many of his golf balls. This man owes me probably 10 drinks. He's terrible at golf.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
So
Yeah,
funny.
he's probably like shanking his
Just
shots on purpose just to like
yeah.
get more business.
So
Awesome.
those are discretionary things.
Hmm.
What about one-time expenses? How should agencies,
Yeah,
if they're looking to figure out their own EBITDA, how do they determine one-time expenses and what's included versus what's not?
absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good question because that's something that I think a lot of times you wouldn't expect us to remove because, when we say discretionary non-recurring, you know, some equipment purchases might be a recurring thing that you would might, computers, for example. Let's say that I take out your computers. Well, that is equipment that you could have capitalized, and other agencies may have capitalized that expense. So we tend to remove, unless it's like, very obviously not like smaller expenses, Best Buy charges and stuff like that. I'm not taking those off. But, a lot of times what we take off for the capital expenditures is large items that could have been like roof repairs or something like that. That's a non-recurring item. That's very obviously, hopefully, not going to happen multiple times. We take that off because is pretty clearly not recurring. And
Yeah.
then severance pay is also another thing. That employee is
Hmm.
no longer with you, so you don't need to. Once you're done paying the severance, that's no longer an ongoing expense for you. So those are a couple examples. There's a lot of things that could go on the balance sheet that are being expensed, and there are plenty of reasons to do that. But for benchmarking purposes, we like to move those off of the P&L for clarity.
And even
Yeah.
some things that don't belong on the balance sheet, but you're not gonna do it again. Maybe you changed your name or you built a new agency manager or you went and moved to another agency management system. That fee to move your
Hmm.
data from one agency
Yeah.
management system to another isn't gonna happen every single year. By
Yeah.
God, you do not want to change agency management systems every single year, right?
No.
So,
Please,
Oh my
please
yeah.
god.
don't.
So there's lots of one-time things when you dig into your financials that you might not even realize. And for us, we're looking at a trend for 3 years. Like, what have you spent in marketing for the last 3 years? What have you spent in
Mhm.
occupancy? And you can see these peaks and valleys. And sometimes we dig in and realize the peak was we did a rebrand or we built a new website or we did something one time that caused this peak. Or It could be you tried a marketing thing, a marketing technique or something that you abandon, and it's not going to continue forward, but it's skewing your 3-year trend on what your expenses are in that category. So
Mhm.
one-time expenses can kind of sneak up on you until
Yeah.
someone asks you about it. It's not something you're really thinking about, you know?
Yeah, and for the special projects, or things that terminated mid-year that you're like you unsubscribed from something, unless you're replacing that with something else, we really do need to take it off of the P&L for comparison, because it's not helpful to the client. It's not helpful to you to know what your expenses would be if you continued paying an expense you're no longer going to be paying. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's our coffee break for today, folks. How do you take out discretionary and one-time expenses in order to find your agency's like true adjusted EBITDA, like Lauren would at AgencyFocus when she's editing financials? Thank you for joining us. If you are interested in getting a valuation or a benchmarking report done to assess the health of your agency, reach out to us. We'd love to help. And Lauren would love to adjust your expenses.
Thanks,
Super
Lauren.
excited. All right. See ya.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how AgencyFocus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.